Former Texans running back Dameon Pierce was just released, and with the MASH unit, the Chargers running back room has been, he could be a huge boost to their offense.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. But thank you to all the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcasts from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, after your first two running backs, your top two guys go down, it's a really difficult situation for any team to have to navigate, and the Chargers have had their struggles trying to do it. And whenever anybody gets released that could possibly help at that position, the Chargers should be interested, and Dameon Pierce is that guy, and the Chargers should definitely be picking up the phone. And also, with the coaching staff, they've had their challenges they've had to navigate this year. Have they underachieved considering everything that they have had to deal with? And if Bobby Hart and Trey Pipkins are both available, should both of them play? It's something we got to talk about on today's show.
I mean, they've probably been the two best pass protectors that are still on this roster, just at the same position. But today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. It is a Fan Mail Friday, and we wanted to let you guys get involved with the show today, and you guys brought it because we have some great questions to get into, and a name we had seen out there is one that Kristen's better half is bringing up here, saying, should the Chargers pick up Dameon Pierce since he was just released by the Texans? Texans former running back who had fallen out of favor in Houston over the last couple of years, a decently high draft pick that had a really promising rookie season, and then it's kind of tailed off from there. But this is the interesting thing because the Chargers could be getting Omarion Hampton back next week, and that's what pretty much all the signs have pointed to so far. Kamani Vidal is in the lineup, but David, we've also had to see them kind of go to some desperate measures as far as the running back depth already this year.
Absolutely. I mean, you'd only have to look as far as the stat line of the last game that the Chargers played in. It reads like this. Justin Herbert, leading rusher at 3 carries for 21 yards. Then it's Kamani Vidal, 5 for 13. Amar Johnson, who they signed off the street, off the practice squad, 2 carries for 8 yards. Then you have Trey Lance, 3 carries for 1 yard, and Travion Williams, who had 3 carries for -1 yard. So the Chargers desperately need to add somebody who has some experience, who has some playmaking ability, who has shown that they can get it done at the NFL level. And yeah, Dameon Pierce had a very good rookie year, 220 carries for 939 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's a few years removed from that, but he's also a guy that has been able to catch the ball out of the backfield, 45 receptions, 268 yards, and a touchdown from that department. And the bottom line is he's definitely not worse than Amar Johnson and Travion Williams. So the Chargers should be looking to upgrade there. We don't know what's happening with Hassan Haskins. He still has to miss some more time on IR, so who knows when he'll be back. But Jarrett Patterson, Kamani Vidal, they've done admirably, but they need some help.
Yeah, and I think the thing is you usually have 3 running backs active on game day anyway. So we know Hassan Haskins has to miss at least one more game because he went on injured reserve 3 games ago, so he'll have to miss the Raiders game, could come back against the Eagles. At the same time, though, that's just the earliest he could come back. We don't actually know if he will be ready to come back, and he missed a couple of games before they placed him on IR. So that situation, I don't know if you can really have a lot of faith in when he's going to be back. But I think with Dameon Pierce, it's just been weird because, he's been out of favor there for the last couple of seasons, really since D'Amico Ryans took over there. But last year, didn't play most of the season, and then the last game goes out there and has 19 carries for 176 yards in the final game of the year. In total, 40 carries, 293 yards for a 7.3 yards per carry average. Obviously, a very small sample size, but still showed he has some gas in the tank for sure. This is another reason I would absolutely love it. He had 9 kick returns last year, and he averaged 37.7 yards per kick return. Again,
I like that.
A small sample size, he wasn't as effective doing it this year, but last year you already had this new format they're rolling out there, and he showed he could be super successful. And he had basically more, 40-plus yard returns by himself last year than everyone has combined for the Chargers so far this year. So a lot of reasons to do it. He still has to clear waivers unless the Chargers put a waiver claim on him, which they should. But even if Marion's back, even if Vidal's still in the lineup, there's no reason not to have those three guys if you can, especially if it's going to basically cost you nothing. And could probably be something like what they thought Najee Harris could be, or at least be in that role to a certain extent. But at least you'd have insurance on if Kamani Vidal or Amarion Hampton isn't there, it's not Travion Williams or Amar Johnson or Jarrett Patterson, which is, I think, what you're trying to avoid. But
yeah,
let's get into this question here from John Clark, who says, give me one guy on offense and defense who may have underperformed a bit prior to the break, but can now make a real difference after the break if he plays more to his historical norms. David, let's start on the defensive side of things here. Who did you go with?
On the defensive side of this, I'm looking at the middle of the defense, and I'm looking at Deion Henley. I know Deion Henley's had a very tough season, a lot of off-the-field stuff going on. I completely understand it, and it would affect anybody out there. Any human being walking this earth would be affected by what he has had to go through. But the fact of the matter is, he hasn't played up to his standard. He hasn't played up to his quality or his level of play. We know what he's capable of. At his peak, he's one of the best all-around linebackers in the NFL, can do a little bit of everything. But I think, he just hasn't been quite as impactful in coverage, not quite as impactful against the run. And I know he is capable of being that type of impact player. So for me, that guy that if he steps it up, just ratchets it up a notch on defense, to me, it's Deion Henley.
Yeah, that's who I went with as well. I mean, I think the Chargers need Deion Henley to help carry this unit and to kind of give them some consistency defensively. And, he has gone through a lot, but he needs to try to get back to that 2025 form for this defense to kind of return to their prior form. And I think, to me, obviously, he's well-rounded. They need him to be better against the run. But the one place he has shown he can be special is in coverage, and we just haven't seen that from him this year. He's number one in pass breakups last year, out of all the linebackers in the league. This year, he's 14th with 2, but he's 30th in forced incompletion percentage. So that, along with him also allowing the 10th most receiving yards in the league by any linebacker with 365. Yeah, if he's better, it'll make a big difference for this defense down the stretch. But who did you go with on offense?
On offense is a little bit more difficult to find the person I wanted to identify, but I think for me, it's a guy who has been a healthy scratch the last couple of weeks. It's Will Dissly. Will Dissly has to work his way back into the lineup here because he's one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. I mean, and he's shown it over multiple seasons, so it's not a fluke. And right now, the Chargers need all the protection that they can possibly get from anywhere they can get it from. So Will Dissly needs to get back on the field, be that guy as an extra blocker, be that really good run blocker to open up some holes. We need that guy that was one of the first signings that Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz brought into the table as a free agent. A deal we were like, who is this and why did they give him that much money? Yeah. But after you see him on the field and see what he can do, you see why. He can be an impact guy. He needs to work his way back on the field because the Chargers need it.
Yeah, it's been surprising. Since he's come back from the injury, he hasn't been out there. It seems like a special teams thing because they have Tyler Conklin playing on some coverage units, but to me, it doesn't make a ton of sense. Plus, he was like one of the more prolific tight end screen guys in the NFL last year because it's Will Dissly and no one ever sees it coming when you're drawing up a screen pass to Will Dissly specifically. So they need him out there, not only, because you need to help the tackles that you have left desperately, but also because you need help in the running game as well and finding consistency. And I think back to Andy Bischoff's first ever press conference saying not many tight ends can own the C gap. That's what Will Dissly can do. Yet he's been a healthy scratch. So he has to be healthy coming off this bye week all the way back up to 100%. Hopefully he can find his way back onto the active roster on game day. But we still have more. Actually, I ended up going with Mekhi Becton there. I mean, someone that's played at a higher level before. Obviously, last year he did. But I just think that, if you could guarantee that he and Bobby Hart or he and Trey Pipkins could just be there together for the rest of the season, Like, I do think that would make a difference for this offense, even if he's been really up and down. And it just sucks, too, because it's like, who else could you realistically think? Like, I can't really trust that Bozeman's going to do it. We were supposed to see Mekhi Becton and Joe Alt together, which has just been so massive, literally. And I'm upset we didn't get to see that. But it's been a disappointment for Mekhi Becton. If he can turn it on down the stretch, that would make a huge difference on this offensive line. But speaking of underperforming so far, has this Chargers coaching staff underperformed in 2025? We're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action than right now. And if you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and one of the things that we love about it, anywhere that PrizePicks operates, you can play, including California, Texas, and Georgia, obviously, which is great for me and David. I've been using PrizePicks for a long time during both football Sundays and now with the NBA being back as well. But this weekend, you won't be able to use any Chargers players projections because it is the bye week. When I can't do that, what I do is I try to go less than on Chiefs players or other players in the division. So that's what I'm going to be doing this week with Patrick Mahomes in a huge game, more than or less than 271.5 passing yards. And you can combine that with hopefully less than for Travis Kelce at 52.5 receiving yards. It's that simple. You hit 2 and you win. But right now, download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups. After that first $5 lineup, PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, David, well, let's get into more fan mail questions that we have here. And thank you again to the Everydayers for contributing to today's show. And we have a frequent Everydayer here from Big Daddy E asking today, injuries aside, do you think the coaching staff has had a bad season overall, considering the expectation of a Harbaugh-led team, multiple blowouts, playing down to lesser opponents, and regressing in all phases since last year? Great bye week shows, guys, this week. Kudos. David, do you think that it has been a down year from the Chargers coaching staff?
Yeah, I think that you can come to that conclusion, especially in the special teams rank after, the first couple of years of Ryan Ficken being, one of the better special teams coordinators in the league, and the ranks really reflecting that. This year has been a complete disappointment in that realm for sure. On defense, I feel like, you've seen the same kind of issues that were there last year that are there this year. And that's just kind of a byproduct of how Jesse Minter calls his defense and sets up his defense, trying to kind of invite the run a little bit and then take away all the big plays and make them dink and dunk down the field. Those are going to have certain issues. If you don't execute in run support, it could get really, really ugly, which we've seen the teams that can run the ball really effectively, or at least stay committed to it, can have a lot of success against the Chargers defense so far. And on offense, like I think, weaponry wise, they're definitely more dangerous there, but the offensive line is such a big problem that it's hard to be able to execute. And also Justin Herbert's been a little bit, more loose with the football. He's thrown more interceptions so far this year, a lot more than last year, obviously. But yeah, I think, considering just up and down the roster, looking at all 3 phases, they have not performed anywhere close to how they performed last year. Also, given the context of having a much more difficult schedule.
Yeah, that is a big part of it too. I think the hard thing is like, to Big Daddy's point here, last year, you really only had one bad loss. You only had one loss to a team that didn't make the playoffs, and it was to the 8-9 Cardinals. And an all-time weird game where the Chargers settled for 5 field goals. T.R. Tart intercepts the ball that he ends up fumbling. Jalen Reagor fumbles through the end zone for a touchback. Like, it took a bunch of wacky things to go down in that game for the Chargers to lose to a non-playoff team last year. And that was an 8-9 team, right? That was a team that was a couple games away from being a playoff team. Now you look at this year, they've lost to a 2-9 Giants team in Jackson Dart's debut. That has not aged gracefully at all. You thought it would after they beat the Chargers and the Eagles this year, which is just a weird thing. But then they also lost to the 3-8 Commanders. Like, unacceptable, right?
Badly.
And I think last year they only had one loss by more than 10 points. It was the Buccaneers game where they lost 40-17. You lose by 23. They might not even been that close. They got smoked in that game just like they got smoked last week by the Jaguars. This year, they've had 3 14-plus point losses. Like, they've lost by 2 touchdowns or more 3 times already, including the blowout 35-6 last week. So, getting blown out more, losing to worse teams, I do think you could say, hey, like, even with a tougher schedule this year, they have kind of, underperformed in that way, but they do have those built-in excuses, obviously. And they have bigger wins this year, which is weird to say than they did last year, right? Obviously, last year they didn't beat the Chiefs at all. Lost to an arguably worse Steelers team in that game. So they have wins against those teams. But, yeah, man, it's hard. I think it's a case-by-case basis. It's a coach-by-coach basis for sure. But, yeah, I'd say overall, I think it's a very fair sentiment. I think especially with all the expectations going into year 2 of Jim Harbaugh. So, yeah, I think that's totally fair. Let's get to this one here from HDBT, who asks, if we miss the playoffs, which is a real possibility, do you think the injuries will overshadow the obvious need for change on the offensive line and maybe even the offensive coordinator, causing us to run it back with the same squad? I'll start by just saying I don't think there's any possible chance we see the same 3 interior offensive linemen. Like, I think having the Joe Ortiz clip floating around, having them try to basically solve it again with the same people this year and watching how brutal that's been, I don't think there's any chance. But I honestly think that if they miss the playoffs altogether, it makes it more likely that we will see some heads roll, even maybe some significant ones.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Obviously, the whole object of playing this game is to win championships. And obviously, to do that, you have to get to the playoffs. So if you don't do that, especially with the money that you're paying your head coach, which is, top 10 NFL head coach money, it definitely comes with the expectation that you win. So if you don't do that, then obviously things will definitely happen. But I mean, losing both your starting tackles and both your starting running backs is difficult for any, offense to overcome. Like, that is really, really, you'd be hard pressed to see any other team, still be in playoff contention with those unique issues that they have to overcome. So the fact that, right now, the Chargers are still in a good spot and they still have what they want in front of them. If they don't make the playoffs, I'm with you. There's some people that are definitely going to get fired.
And I think that the hard part about this is to not try to look at it in the micro of what's happened in the 11 games they played so far this season, and think about the fact that all of these guys now have had a season and a half to really be able to put their resume forward. And when trying to make these decisions, that all has to be accounted for, especially when you're talking about Greg Roman, because they had Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt last year for pretty much the entire season, and they still lost the same way because of the same basically interior that they have right now outside of Mekhi Becton, who's been in and out of the lineup anyways. And then the 2 guys that you brought back and had them switch positions in training camp. Like, that's the thing. You have 2 really good excuses in Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. Like, the running back part obviously sucks, but like, Kimani Vidal has been good, like pretty good. Like, you haven't had bad running back play in most of the games that you've had this season. You could point out a couple of them, but it hasn't been what their biggest issue, right? It's the offensive line blocking in front of the running backs. For sure, that is a much bigger issue than the actual running backs who have been running the football themselves. We've seen Kimani Vidal has it, right?
Yeah.
But it is a good excuse for Greg Roman to have. And I think that's the thing is, like, it's almost more that if he makes the playoffs and then they just get embarrassed again because of the same issues, does that cause them to keep Greg Roman because they still made the playoffs without Joe Alt and without Rashawn Slater? I think if you miss the playoffs, and then, you still try to like advocate for him, you could still have those same excuses. But with Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert in place, you should never miss the playoffs, period.
Yeah.
That just has to always be the standard, even if you have these big time injuries that have 100% totally changed the trajectory of your season, right? Like, that's just, it is what it is. But either way, like, these were issues, especially with Greg Roman that we saw last year. These were issues with the interior of the offensive line that we saw last year. So just because those guys got injured this year doesn't absolve what the other problems are on this team, especially the lack of change that they had this year at the interior of the offensive line. I'd be shocked if it wasn't different next season. But we still have more to get into, including more about this offensive line, because the 2 best pass protectors on the roster right now, David, at least as far as 2025 and recently, are Bobby Hart and Trey Pipkins. Unfortunately, they play the same position. Could we see both of these guys starting after the bye week? We're getting into all that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about GameTime because the NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping up at checkout. It can be super frustrating. That's why I use GameTime, because it's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. GameTime is fast, easy, and backed by the 100% GameTime guarantee, knowing that you're going to get authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. If you find a price better somewhere else, GameTime will match it. That's why GameTime is the best. And you guys have a chance to go see the Chargers, play the Raiders, and be wearing the all navies. I mean, I really wish I could go see those jerseys in person this year, because I think they're like the best jersey in the NFL already. And you could do that at $121 for this upcoming game next weekend against the Raiders. And it's already dropped $11, the lowest price since last week. The closer it gets to kickoff, the lower it will get. So download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download GameTime today. All right, David, well, we still have some more fan mail questions to get into, and thank you all for making us the #1 sports podcast network, and of course for listening to this show every day. And hopefully it has been therapeutic, of sorts to listen to everything this week. I think we've tried to, basically be realistic about what happened in that game and not try to overlook the flaws that are on this roster, but also trying to still show that the season isn't over, because it's absolutely not. Excited. Right now, we're planning on having Chris Hayre on the show next week, so hopefully he can be a breath of fresh air and give us, some good things to feel about and see what he's thinking about the season at this point. But thank you guys for continuing to check in, because the season is a long way from over. But let's start here, David, with something that'll be very important going forward from Omar Aguilar, who asks, if Bobby Hart and Trey Pipkins are both playing decently, shouldn't we try both of them in the starting lineup? What do you think? Yeah, no, they definitely should. I agree. I could see David's lips doing it because he was muted. But yes, they should try it. Unfortunately, that's not really what either of them has done.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is not what they've done. But yeah, if there's a way to make it work to where both of them could be on the field, then you absolutely should make that happen. But there is another alternative, another guy who I feel like deserves another chance, another opportunity. It is Jamaree Salyer. I think what we've seen and what he's shown us is that his best position in the NFL is at tackle. It's not at guard. He's been one of the worst rated guards in the NFL. He's actually been a somewhat decent tackle whenever he's been out there at left tackle. I feel like if it can't be Trey Pipkins and Bobby Hart both on the field, it should be Jamaree Salyer on one side and Bobby Hart or Trey Pipkins on the other, depending on if Bobby Hart's ready to go or not.
Yeah, and you have to think he is, right? Because he was questionable going into the last game, now gets 2 weeks in between that game and this game, which brings up a tough decision. And it's only tough because Trey Pipkins has been really good recently. He only has 4 pressures allowed over the last 3 games, 101 pass blocking snaps. Like, I thought Bobby Hart for sure would, stroll right back in to where he belongs on that right side. And he was also really good. The problem is Bobby Hart has 4,600 plus snaps at right tackle and 107 career snaps at left tackle. He's never done it, like not really ever. And Trey Pipkins hasn't really played left tackle almost at all since his rookie season on a consistent basis. And they've shown you time and time again by putting Austin Deculus on the left side that they prefer Trey Pipkins on the right side. So, of course, that would be such a Chargers problem to have, is you have 2 guys who can really only play right tackle, or at least that's what they've shown. And those are your 2 best pass protectors, and you can only fit one of them into your starting 5 right now. But I agree with you on Jamaree Salyer, which so does Brant here, who says, how are you guys? Love the show. My question is, do you think the offensive line would be a little bit more productive with Jamaree Salyer at left tackle, and then Zion Johnson, Bradley Bozeman, Trevor Penning at right guard, and Bobby Hart at right tackle, with Becton hurt to lean on the running game? So I agree with the Jamaree Salyer of it all. I don't care, what you feel like with him as a run blocker. He's actually been pretty good at right guard too since the first couple of games. Like, it does feel like he should be in the lineup coming out of the bye somewhere. But yeah, absolutely okay with putting him at left tackle. I don't think you put Trevor Penning at left tackle just because you traded for him if it's obviously not a good fit. And based on that last game, I don't know how you put him back out there and expect much better. Obviously, he was behind the 8 ball, but still, give Jamari Sawyer a shot there. And then I do think it's, another thing to experiment with. If Mekhi Becton's not in the lineup and you have Jamari Sawyer already playing left tackle specifically, why not give Trevor Penning a shot there? Again, though, has never once played right guard. It's like where they need these guys, they don't have any experience. They've been putting Trevor Penning on the left side since he's been with the Chargers. They told us that. But yeah, like I would be 100% okay with trying it.
Yeah, because the one thing we do know about Trevor Penning is he does have that nastiness. He does have that mean streak. He does have that, hey, I'm going to block you through the whistle type of mentality where, he said, hey, I get to legally assault somebody, assault the person across from me for 60 minutes in a football game. So he does have that killer instinct as a blocker. So, we know what his kind of deficiencies are on the outside. Maybe that can be mitigated a little bit on the inside where you have a little bit of, a smaller area, but also, you have to deal with the quickness on the inside too. And that could sometimes be even worse. So I don't know if the Chargers are going to want to move him around too much, especially this late in the season. Like you kind of want to just stick him in one spot and let him try to commit to being the best he can be at that spot. But right now, with the Chargers' issues on the offensive line, they really have to try to figure out, as we put out in our kind of bye-week checklist, you got to find the best 5 offensive linemen to go out there and protect your quarterback.
Yeah, and this is the thing. If there's going to be a major shift in this, this would be the time to do it. Obviously, they're getting a lot of this extra week off, but if you're, conceptually trying to figure out what this offense looks like with each of these guys in one of these spots, this is the time you want to do that. And I mean, even, our friend Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints, when we talked to him about it, he's like, if they wanted to play guard, it can work out. He's not a bad guard. A tackle for him, it hasn't worked out. So I think there's definitely something there. If Mekhi Becton can't play, this could be the ideal lineup. That's the one I would want to see, even though, again, Trevor Penning has never played right guard, just like Bobby Hart's basically never played left tackle, and Trey Pipkins hasn't done it for 6 years. So those are the issues, but I don't blame them at all for trying something different. Do they try something different at center? This is from Jess Bolts, who says, I think, and speaking for a lot of Chargers fans here, I understand, I generally want to know what Bradley Bozeman knows about Jim Harbaugh that threatens him so much that he cannot bench that guy. It's effing ridiculous to see that type of play from a starting center. It's just stupid. It's very upsetting. Thank you guys for the pod. It's a great listen. And, we don't like to just bash players for no reason or anything like that, or ever talk badly or name call anything the players. We just have that much respect for them. And, it's just not needed. Bradley Bozeman, for a year and a half plus now, has just not been good enough. And that's just been what it is. I mean, Andre James gets in this last game for a little bit and looked decent, and, didn't look obviously out of place there. And I think it's harsh, but I do think a lot of fans are sharing this sentiment right now with Bradley Bozeman, who was brought back in the offseason, is a team captain, and feels like he can kind of do no wrong. Very interesting to see that he came out of that last game, though, right? Is that peak anything for you? It was just something I was thinking about today, where it's just I know they pulled Justin Herbert out, but pulling Justin Herbert out isn't necessarily the same thing as pulling Bradley Bozeman out and putting Andre James in there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it was just hey, we're going to get our starters out of there and we're going to put our backups in, unfortunately.
Some of them, right? Because some starters were still in there, too. So that's weird.
You can't replace everybody. I mean, that's
true.
The thing. You just don't have enough players to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So, but the numbers don't lie. I mean, in 2024, he gave up 4 sacks and 27 pressures and only 4 hits in 2024. In 2025, he's already given up 5 hits and 24 pressures, and there's 6 games left. So no matter how you look at it, he unequivocally has been a disappointment at the center position. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's just what it is. And I'll say it now. I'll say it in the future. Absolutely, it's time to get Andre James on the field. How could you not? What do you have to lose to not give him a chance to show the ability to be a better pass protector, to be a better run blocker? Because no matter how you look at it, the only thing that Bradley Bozeman's been bringing to the table is the durability, and that's about it.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. And like, I think the thing is too, is like when you have an offensive line and specifically an interior trio that has struggled and had as much in and out as the Chargers lineup had this year, because that isn't just the tackles who have been in and out of the lineup. Obviously, we've talked at length about Mekhi Becton not being able to finish games. At the same time, though, like, there's just no excuse now because it's been, 17, 18, 38, close to 40 games now, right? Is what we're talking about with Bradley Bozeman with this team. So, like, I don't know, man. Like, I just think that, close to 30 games, I should say. But, like, this is one thing. Like, it wasn't a good free agency class. I saw 80 Simons put out on Twitter, put something, a good food for thought. That basically is a very bad center draft and free agency for the Chargers this last season. Drew Dahlman was the pride of the group and went for, record setting money and wasn't necessarily a scheme fit with the Chargers. And then Ryan Kelly was the other big, older veteran that made sense. And he's been on IR for a while now, which is probably one of the reasons the Chargers didn't get him. And then also he put this, which I thought was interesting. Only 3 of the top 10 ranked centers in the draft going into the draft are on active NFL rosters right now. So, like, if only 3 guys from this last draft class, right, are even on rosters, and 2 of the 2 top free agents, only one team can get the top guy anyway. So I don't say that to, alleviate or any responsibility that Joe Ortiz has to this team, because he put himself in the spot that he has. And there are other guys out there who at least could have been better than what they've got out of Bradley Bozeman. One of them might be on the roster right now. So, like, I just think that, when they went into camp trying to have Zion Johnson play center and Bradley Bozeman play guard, when they hadn't really done that, and Bozeman hadn't done it in a long time, they kind of told you that they didn't fully trust what they had there, and they still ran it back anyways. This year, more free agents, way more free agents, supposedly a much better draft class for centers. It has to get done, even if Bradley Bozeman's on a 2-year contract. I would be shocked, David, if he's back as the center in 2025.
Yeah, there's no way he's going to be back. And yeah, I've seen that list too, including the Ravens center, Linderbaum, who's, could be heading to free agency. If that guy makes it, I mean, the Chargers have enough money. They can throw him a blank check, basically. They can, and maybe that was the plan all along, right? Maybe they saw, hey, this free agency class just isn't it. Next year, I'm going to have a boatload of money too, and maybe I can be more intentional and make smarter deals, even if they are going to be on the larger end. You maybe get somebody that's closer to a Lindsley than a Bozeman.
Yeah, man, it's been really tough. But I just think that, like, that, at the same time, like, to put Justin Herbert behind that group that they have right now is borderline irresponsible, and to be better with the tackles out there, obviously he wouldn't be taking the same kind of hits. But yeah, like, there's something too, we talked about on the bye week show, where it's like, you don't want to spend a bunch of money and have a bunch of bad free agent contracts. That was the Tom Telesco way. They're trying to wait for a better class potentially, but there's no excuse to not come out. Like, you cannot start the 2026 season with Bradley Bozeman at center, even if he's a great dude. And we know he's a great dude. He's been on the show. It just doesn't matter. Like, you have to have a better option. You owe that much to Justin Herbert and Chargers fans in general. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Be back here on Monday for Buy or Sell Monday, because we have the special Chris Hayre interview on Tuesday. We're going to be doing our Buy or Sell show a day early. Different kind of week next week with Thanksgiving coming up. So hit us up for that. Hit us up at Locked On LAC with your buy or sell, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. And to make sure you don't miss that show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. And you can also call into the Chargers voicemail, Locked On Chargers voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers voicemail there. Big week coming up, David. Must win against the Raiders next week. Buy or Sell Monday, big time interview with Chris Hayre on Tuesday. We'll be back with you guys then. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.